I am Paige Tanner, 34 years old, and I discovered what my family truly thought of me from a hospital bed. 6 weeks after giving birth to my daughter, Nora. A truck ran a red light on Colfax while I was driving home from a late shift. I woke up with 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung, and a cast on my right arm. My husband, Daniel, was in Seattle, 6 hours away from getting home. Someone had to watch my newborn that night. And my mother lived 20 minutes away. She said, "No." She told Daniel one sentence, and that single line is why you are here. Your sister never has these emergencies. My sister was on a Caribbean cruise. My mother was sitting at a casino. What I did from that bed in the next 3 minutes cost them 9 years and $486,000. That is not even the part that broke them. The move that destroyed them walked through the door 3 hours later. An old man carrying a worn folder. And he said, something none of them ever expected to hear. Welcome back to Hidden Family Revenge, where the quiet ones finally settle the score. If someone in your life has ever treated your kindness like a blank check, this story is for you. Leave a comment and tell me who actually showed up when you hit rock bottom. And subscribe. I need to tell you about that phone call, because that is where it begins. I came out of the anesthesia in a curtained air-by. The first thing I felt was the heavy cast on my right arm and the plastic ID band digging into my left wrist. A nurse was repeating my name like she had said it a few times already. My ribs felt like someone had parked a sedan on my chest. Daniel was on speaker on the pillow beside my head, and his voice was tight. That flat, careful tone he uses when he is terrified, but trying to hide it. Paige. The sitter cannot stay. Basta leven. I called your mom. I knew before he even spoke. She will not come. There was a silence. And behind it, I could hear it faint and unmistakable. The electronic chime and chatter of a casino floor. The little fanfare a machine plays when it pays out. My mother was at Black Hawk with her friends. She told Daniel she could not drive over because she had to watch a cat while my sister, Megan, was on a cruise. A cat. My 6-week-old daughter needed someone for the night, and her answer was a cat. I did not cry. I need you to understand that part, because everyone expects the woman in the hospital bed to break. And I did not. I stared at the plastic wristband. Then I reached over with my left hand and grabbed my phone off the tray. I had a lot to deal with, and I was excellent at managing messes. That was always the problem. You need to know who I was before that night, because it explains why my family treated me like a simple faucet. I grew up in a drafty duplex in Aurora where the heat worked when it felt like it. I paid for community college working the closing shift at a grocery store, transferred on scholarship, and fought my way into a finance career nobody back home understood. By 30, I was a senior financial analyst at a Fortune 500 company. The person they called when the numbers absolutely had to be right. I analyze data for a living. Numbers do not have favorites, and they do not lie to your face, which is more than I could say for my own mother. Daniel and I married at 26 and decided to wait on kids. Mostly because we wanted, and mostly because there was always something the family needed first. We lived frugally and quietly. Nobody noticed. 2 paychecks. 1 beat-up car. 0 debt. That is the only reason what I am about to tell you was, even possibly. For 9 years, I had been wiring my parents $4,500 a month. I never said the sum out loud. Not to my husband. Not to my sister. Not to a soul. I told myself it was for my father's heart surgery and the mortgage. I told myself I was the only one stable enough to pay it. And being the steady one had become my whole identity. I am telling you this now so you understand. I wasn't naive. I was responsible to the point of total self-erasure. There is a difference. And that night I finally learned it. The first thing I did was not revenge. The first thing I did was solve the actual problem, because that is just who I am. With my left thumb, I called a licensed overnight care agency Daniel and I had vetted before Nora was born but never actually used. A woman answered on the second ring. I gave her my name, my situation, and my address in 9 sentences. Calm as a Tuesday. I need a night nurse for a 6-week-old, starting right now. She asked if the baby was medically stable. She is perfect. I am the one in the hospital. 40 minutes later, a nurse named Yvette let herself into my house with the code Daniel gave her, washed her hands, and texted me a photo of Nora asleep, with her fist against her cheek. I stared at that photo for a long time. The ER nurse beside me watched me set the phone down and asked gently if I had family who could come. It is handled, I said. Next. She blinked. People always blink when you do not give them the breakdown they expect. Braced for it. I wasn't being cold. I was triaging. The way you do when you have spent your whole life being the only adult in a room full of adults. My daughter was safe and warm and watched. My husband was in the air. My ribs would heal. There was exactly one item left on the list that night, one I had carried for 9 years and never once allowed myself to touch. Now my left hand was free, and my mind was incredibly clear. I opened my banking app. The login screen glowed in the dark bay like a small cold moon. Inside the app, there is a screen for recurring transfers. And I had 4 of them. I knew them by heart. The way you know a jagged scar. The first was labeled Mom and Dad. $2,000 a month. The second said Home. $3,000. For the mortgage I believed I was helping pay for. The third said Dad Medical. $900. The fourth just said Megan Support. $500. $4,500 on the first of every month for 108 months. I had set the first one up at 25. The night my father called me sobbing about a hospital bill, and I had never let myself add up the total enter, because the total felt like a door I could not walk back through. So I made myself look. The app did the math without flinching. $486,000. Almost $500,000. Gone out of my life. One quiet automated payment at a time. While my mother told the relatives we managed on our own, I pressed cancel on the first transfer. A green check appeared. And a line of text I will remember until I die. Recurring transfer canceled. I pressed the second. Recurring transfer canceled. The third. The fourth. 4 taps. Maybe 20 seconds. And 9 years simply stopped. The way A60A. The faucet stops. No triumph. No grief. Just a cold. Flat clarity. Exactly like when a spreadsheet finally balances. Then, as I closed the app, my eyes caught a detail in the transaction history I had ignored until now. A single line item buried under the medical label from 2 years ago. It read, Luanme. $40,000. My sister's initial. Not my father's surgery. Megan. I locked the phone and lay in the dark, listening to the monitor count my heartbeats. I forced myself to sit with the question I had dodged for 9 years. Why did I do it? The easy answer, the one strangers give, is that I was just a pushover desperate for love. That answer is wrong. And if you have ever been the reliable one, you know the truth. I did it because somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that being needed was the same as being safe. If I was the load-bearing wall, no one could remove me. My grandmother saw that part of me before I did. Her name was Ruth. My mother's mother. A tall, flinty woman who smelled like coffee and machine oil and never had to raise her voice to get a room's attention. The year before she died, She took my hand at Thanksgiving and said, "Somebody has to watch this family's money. And your mother won't. So it will have to be you." I thought she meant be generous. I realize now she meant something closer to be vigilant. Ruth passed away quietly last spring, and I was too buried in a new pregnancy and a tough quarter to ask what she left or to whom. I assumed my mother had handled it. Just as I assumed my money was buying my father's medicine, I had spent a lifetime assuming the best about people who had never earned it, and calling that loyalty. I assumed it was love. Lying there, staring at the ceiling. My daughter 40 minutes away in a stranger's care. It finally hit me. I'd been paying for a fairy tale about my family. Not the real thing. The actual family had just prioritized a cat. Then Daniel called from his layover. He told me exactly what my mother said. Word for word. Because he knew I needed that clarity. He'd called her at 9, explained my surgery, and begged her to just drive the 20 minutes to help. She gave him that signature. Dramatic sigh. You know the one, and said no. Megan was finally on her dream trip. And someone had to watch the cat. Besides, she said, I always land on my feet. Then she dropped it. The line that cut deepest. Your sister never has these emergencies. As if the truck that hit me checked my family rank before crashing. As if my daughter's first night without me could wait for a vacation to end. Daniel's voice cracked as he spoke. I told him to breathe. Said Nora was fine. Said I was fine. Told him to get on his plane. After we hung up, I opened Instagram. I barely touched the app, and there she was. Megan's story. A glowing reel of a turquoise pool. A fancy drink. And a caption, living my best life finally. My 29-year-old sister, an aspiring influencer with 11,000 followers and a $500 monthly allowance she thought was a gift from the universe. I didn't comment. I didn't scream into the dark. I just opened my messages and typed 3 words to a contact I never use. A number saved simply as Grandpa H. I wrote, "We should talk." The 3 dots appeared almost instantly. I typed to Grandpa, "We should talk." The 3 dots started pulsing. Fast. Like he had been waiting 9 years for that text. And maybe he was... I expected Grandpa Harold to reply. Instead, my phone lit up with a video call from the middle of the Caribbean. It was Megan. I answered, left hand holding the phone. Face half in shadow. She did not notice the hospital ceiling behind me. Did not see the cast. Did not ask why I was in bed at midnight. "Paige. Finally," she said, holding the phone way too close. Giving me a tour of her sunburned nose. My card was declined at the spa. Totally humiliating. I waited. She filled the silence the way she always does. She said, "The family account always covers me. Did you touch something?" And there it was. The entire structure of the lie in one sentence. The family account. My sister truly believed $500 a month appeared from some magic bank her mother controlled. She had no idea it came from me. My mother spent 9 years hiding the truth. I asked her if she knew about my accident. Wait. What are you being dramatic right now behind her? A steel drum band started playing. Can you just fix the card we dock in Cozumel tomorrow? And I have a shoot. A shoot I told her I would check on it. Which was true. And that I had to go. Also true. I hung up before she could respond and lay in the dark. The sound of those drums still ringing in my head. My sister was not cruel. Not exactly. She was something almost worse. She was a person who had never once been asked to wonder if the well had a bottom. Because no one ever let her see who was hauling the water. The next morning, they moved me to a regular room. And that is when the family plane room. And that is when the family arrived. My phone started vibrating on the tray. A group chat named Reynolds Family, a dozen relatives all pinging at once. Usually quiet. Just ants mostly. I never check it. But the screen kept lighting up. Against my gut. I tapped the notification. My mother had been busy. An hour ago, she posted a long, desperate message. It started. I am heartbroken to say Paige is being dramatic. Cutting off her poor parents just to be spiteful. She also claimed my father's health was failing, saying they gave me everything. And she had no idea how to pay for his meds. Then she added for the audience. We always manage on our own. But this is cruel. There it was. That same screen. Same lie. Only this time. It wasn't my bank app. It was a stage. We manage on our own. That woman had been saying that for 9 years. All while cashing my checks every single month. My Aunt Carol already replied with 3 broken hearts and... Shame on her. Hitting a sick man when he is down. A cousin sent a prayer hands emoji. Nobody in that chat knew the truth. Because the truth was never allowed in the room. I held the phone and felt that old reflex, the urge to explain, to soften the blow, to manage their feelings like I always did. I set the phone face down instead. Explaining was the old me. The new me, the one the crash had installed, wanted something colder. More precise. The new me wanted the numbers in the room. And I knew exactly where to find them. Daniel walked into my room at 11 the next morning. Unshaven. Gray with exhaustion. Carrying Nora in her car seat, with a diaper bag over his shoulder. He had flown straight to the house. 11 the next morning. Unshaven. Gray with exhaustion. Carrying Nora in her car seat, with a diaper bag slung over his shoulder. He had flown straight to the house, relieved Yvette. And drove the baby to me. He set the car seat on the bed and studied me. My cast. And the ugly bruising along my jaw. And his eyes welled up. I told him not to, because if he started, I would. And I had work to do. He lifted Nora out and laid her on my chest. Careful of my ribs. And for a minute, the 3 of us just sat there breathing, the only moment from that week I would ever relive. Then my phone rang, and it was my father. Roy Reynolds. 64. The man whose heart I had been funding for 9 years. His voice sounded thin and shaking. Pie, he said, using the name he had not used since I was small. I did not know it got this bad. The money. The crash. I did not know. For one suspended second. I believed he might finally do it. Might stand up for himself. I never wanted you carrying all of it, he said. And I heard him take a breath like a man about to step off a ledge. Then behind him, I heard my mother's voice. Sharp and low. Asking who he was talking to. The line went muffled a hand over the speaker. When he came back, his tone had changed. Flattened. Retreated. I should go. Feel better. And he hung up. That was my father in one phone call. A decent man who spent 40 years learning that the safest way to live in that house was to do absolutely nothing. That afternoon, Daniel brought me my laptop, propped it on the rolling table, and I did the one thing in the world that has never failed to steady my hands. I built a spreadsheet. With my left hand and a lot of patience, I logged into my bank, pulled 9 years of statements, and dropped them into a pivot table. This is what I do for $1 billion firm. I can certainly do it for my own life. I sorted the $486,000 based on where the money actually landed. And the picture that formed piece by piece was nothing like the story Mom told the family. The mortgage, payments I thought I was paying off, had only been made 10 times in 9 years. Not 108. My father's actual medical bills, the real costs for the heart doctor and the prescriptions, added up to $65,000 over that entire period. So, where had the other $421,000 gone? I checked withdrawal locations and dates, and a cluster lit up on the screen like a fever. Cash withdrawals. Hundreds of them. Almost all within 2 miles of one zip code. I checked the map. The zip code was Black Hawk. My mother wasn't just hitting a casino that one night she blew off her granddaughter. Mom had been gambling there for nearly a decade on my dime, while telling every relative she was doing fine on her own. And a second, smaller stream branched off and ran somewhere else entirely. Steady and calculated. Year after year. I traced it. It led to Megan. I leaned back until my ribs creaked and let the math speak. Because numbers, unlike my family, have never lied to me once. I will give you the exact figures because I want you to hold them like I did, because everything from here on depends on them. Out of $486,000, $65,000 matched my father's real medical care. $11,000 hit the mortgage. That left roughly $410,000 missing, splitting into 2 separate rivers. The first, about $290,000 over 9 years, was cash pulled in small, quiet amounts near Black Hawk. So no single withdrawal would ever raise a red flag. The second river flowed to my sister about $120,000, including that $40,000 loan. Sister owed about $120,000, including that $40,000 loan buried under my father's surgery, costs to hide it in the only category nobody questioned. A loan she had never been asked to repay for a sum that it turned out had funded a year of brand building, a leased vehicle, and a photographer in Tulum. I printed the summary onto a single page using the bedside printer. One clean sheet. The full 9 years in 12 rows. Then Daniel showed me one more thing. He had been scrolling the family group chat and screenshotted a message my mother had sent Aunt Carol years ago before this, where she bragged, "We covered Megan's brand ourselves. That is what good parents do. We covered it ourselves." I looked at that screenshot. Then I looked at my one printed page. And something in me went very quiet and very cold. I wasn't going to send an angry text. I wasn't going to explain or defend myself. I was going to drop the paper into the room in front of the same audience my mother had spent 9 years performing for. And then I was going to walk out and never fund the show again. "It is handled," I told Daniel. And for the first time, the words felt less like triage and more like a final verdict. I need to stop here for a second, because if you have made it this far, you might be the person I am about to describe. I spent 9 years believing I was paying for my father's surgery, and I was actually paying for a lifestyle and a brand shoot. If you have ever wired money on faith, go pull one statement. Tonight. Just one. Read it like it isn't yours. If this hits close to home, subscribe. Because the next part is where my grandfather walks through that hospital door. What he said from the bed shattered everything I thought I knew about my mother. Mom figured out the payments had stopped the same way she finds everything when it hit her wallet. The first of the month rolled around. No money showed. And by noon, my phone was blowing up with her name. I let it ring. Twice. I picked up on the third because I was done running. Her voice poured through sweet as honey, the same act she used on strangers. "Honey, you okay? We have been worried sick about you and the baby." Worried sick. Coming from a woman who picked a cat over me. I said I was recovering. "Thanks." There was a pause. She shifted her tone. And the sweetness soured into that cold edge I have known my entire life. I noticed the transfer didn't go through. Bank issue. I told her no. Silence. Then, the guilt trip. Right on cue. After all the things your father and I did for you. Hauling you to every practice. We kept a roof over your head. I let her ramble. She circled back. Just like always. to the only weapon that never failed. And she said it again, quieter now, acting wounded, as if I were the unreasonable one. Funny. Your sister never has these little emergencies. There it was the third time I heard that line in 3 days. But this time, I did not flinch. And I did not apologize. I just said, I know. Mom? And let the words land differently than she expected. Megan never had emergencies because she had me. And now, Megan had a declined card and a car she could not afford. I told my mother I had to feed my baby, and I hung up while she was mid-sentence. Something I had never dared in 34 years. When the mother fails, she sends the aunt. That afternoon, Aunt Carol texted directly at me, something she had done twice in my adult life. Both times to beg for raffle money. Her message was a paragraph of stolen outrage. I am disgusted. Your parents are barely surviving. And you cut them off while your father is sick. Your grandmother would be ashamed. Family takes care of family. I read it twice. The line about my grandmother almost broke me. Because Ruth was the one person in that family I never wanted to disappoint. Then I remembered Ruth's actual words. Someone has to watch this family's money. And your mother won't. And I realized Carol had it exactly backwards. So, I didn't write a paragraph back. I didn't defend myself, cry, or apologize. I attached the single page. The one with 12 rows and 9 years of history on it. And I typed one sentence beneath it. Here is where the money your sister-in-law claims she handles alone actually went. Then, Blackhawk withdrawals are hers. Ask her. Then I put the phone down and changed Nora's diaper one-handed with a calm I had not felt in a decade. The phone buzzed once the little bubbles of Carol typing. Then it stopped. Then nothing. No reply. Not that hour. Not that day. I imagined her in her kitchen reading 12 rows of numbers she could not argue with. Because that is the beauty of a spreadsheet. You can call a person dramatic, but you cannot call a column of withdrawals dramatic. It simply sits there being true. I had spent my life managing this family. It never occurred to me that the kindest is laughed is end. The hardest thing I could do was hand them the truth and let them face it alone. My mother is many things. But she always has another move. The warmth faded. Her power move failed. With the aunt blocked, she reached for the one stage she still controlled. The family dinner invitation. It hit the group chat for the entire Reynolds clan. Dripping with her signature brand of wounded matriarch. Let us all gather Sunday to welcome baby Nora and clear the air as a family. Paige. I hope you will show up so we can bury this little misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, 5 days after she picked a cat over my newborn. She called it a misunderstanding. Daniel read the screen over my shoulder and said, "Lo, you do not have to go. We can. Just stay home with Nora and let them simmer in it." He was right. I did not have to go. But I knew what Sunday was actually for. It was not about my daughter. It was about getting me in a room with relatives who would pressure me to turn the money back on. To force a fake reconciliation until I broke the way I always broke. She wanted an audience for my surrender. So I gave her the audience. But I kept the surrender. I texted back 2 words. We will come. I felt the trap close around the trapper. Then I made one more call to Grandpa H, and we talked for 40 minutes. At the end, he asked me a single question in his dry, gravelly voice. You want it quiet, or you want it true? I looked at Nora asleep in the crook of my arm, the little life I nearly missed while funding a lie. True. I said, then I will bring the folder. He said, I did not ask what was in it. Some part of me already knew it was the thing that would end. This for good. I need to back up a few hours to the moment I promised you earlier. Because it happened before dinner. It is the Hinga. The whole story swings on it. 3 hours after I canceled those transfers, the night of the accident, while Daniel was still flying, my hospital room door creaked open and my grandfather walked in. Harold, 78. My mother's father, wearing a crisp flannel shirt buttoned to his chin. Moving slowly with a cane he clearly despised. I never told him which hospital. He called everyone in the city until he found me. Under his arm, he gripped a thick manila folder, frayed and soft at the corners from age, held by 2 dry, cracked rubber bands. He placed it on my bed like a man putting down a weight he had carried for years. He looked at my cast and the bruises. Jaw tight. Your mother called it a fender bender, he muttered. I drove past 3 exits before I realized she was lying. Then he sat in the vinyl chair, rested his aged hands on the cane, and said the words I will never forget. I knew. I always knew. I asked him what he knew. He stared at the folder, not at me. About the money. All 9 years of it. About where your mother spends her afternoons. About what she told this family while you bled yourself dry. He tapped the folder once. Not tonight. Though, you have enough to handle. We will. Do this right. In front of everyone, where she cannot squirm away. He was right. Some truths only matter if they are told to a full room. Door. He wasn't wrong. Sometimes, the truth only hits home when you say it in a crowded room. Before Harold left that night, he gave me one small piece of it. Claiming that Sunday shouldn't be a surprise, he started talking about my grandmother. Ruth, his wife of 51 years, didn't just drift away peacefully like they told me. During her final year, she grew paranoid. She caught on to my mother's spending. The fancy car. The gambling habits. She stopped hiding it. No point anymore. She started asking around, quietly, just checking where that family money really came from. She cornered Harold one evening, looked him dead in the eye and said, "Somebody is keeping Linda afloat. And it is not us. Find out who." It took him a while. He is old. And the bank did not want to talk to him. But Harold spent 40 years balancing the books for cattle ranches. He knows how to follow the money. He found me. He uncovered 9 years of a granddaughter quietly wiring her entire savings into a hole her mother kept digging. Ruth wanted to fix it before she died. He said she ran out of time. So she did the next best thing. He would not say much else. Not yet. But he told me Ruth spent her final clear months with a lawyer, I.S. Whatever she started had her signature on it, and his plus. An attorney in Boulder was certain it would stand up in court. Harold sat there and said, "In this state, a trust like the one Ruth and I built can be set up exactly the way we wanted. And it works." He stood up, tucked the folder back under his arm, and paused at the door. "She was not ashamed of you. Paige, whatever your mother says, your grandmother trusted you with everything. That is why she chose you." Then he left, and I did not sleep a wink. The day before that, dinner, Harold stopped by the house to check on me. And I finally asked the question that has haunted me my whole life. Why? Megan. Why had my mother spent 30 years treating one daughter like a trophy and the other like a tool? He sat quiet for a long time, just turning his coffee cup. "You have to understand how Ruth raised her," he said. I braced myself because I loved Ruth and did not want her image tarnished. Ruth was a hard woman, mostly fair, but hard. And she had a golden child. And it wasn't my mother. It was my Uncle Danny. God rest his soul. Linda grew up doing the work, while Danny soaked up all the love. The world tilted beneath me because I knew that dynamic. I lived it. So when Linda had you, Harold continued, and you turned out steady, quiet, and capable, just like she had been forced to be. Something inside her snapped, and when Megan arrived, loud, needy, and bright, Linda finally got to play the Linnet Aeneas, mother of the favorite, not the overlooked one. She finally gave Megan what nobody ever gave her. He set the cup down. It is no excuse, just the truth. I sat with that. My mother wasn't some cartoon villain twirling a mustache. She was a woman who was the unloved. Steady support in her own mother's house. And instead of breaking the cycle, she passed it to me while elevating my sister in her own image. The casino, Harold said, was the only place she felt she might actually win something she didn't have to earn by being useful. I understood her perfectly. And I was still finished. That night, I chose exactly what Sunday would be and what it would not. It would not be a shouting match. I had watched my mother win 1,000 screaming arguments. She is an expert at noise. And the second I raised my voice, I would hand her the part she craved. The hysterical, ungrateful daughter with plenty of witnesses to prove it. So, I would not give her that. Noise. I had paper. Here is the imbalance I need you to see, because it changes everything. My mother's weapons were just words, lies told sweetly, and guilt served right on cue. Plus a performance for the family. My weapons, one printed page, a screenshot found in my husband's phone, and a folder tucked into my grandfather's steady hands. She would scream. I would drop documents. She would act. I would make the numbers speak for themselves. She dealt in emotions. I answered with facts. Right in front of the audience she had gathered to tear me down. I told Daniel the plan in the kitchen while Nora was asleep. I am not arguing with her. I said, I am just showing up, laying it on the table, and letting the paper talk. He wondered if I could stay calm, knowing exactly who she is. I thought about every dinner I had forced down, every check I had written, every time I had babysat her feelings instead of stating the truth. I have been calm my entire life, I replied. At some point, I just quit being silent. Those are two very different things. And it took a truck, a cast, and a folder from my grandfather to finally show me the difference. I tucked that single page into Nora's diaper bag, buried under the wipes where absolutely nobody would think to look. Megan flew home from her cruise on Saturday and called me from the terminal. And that call proved just how little had shifted in her life, while mine was being rebuilt from the ground up. Okay. So the cruise was sort of ruined, she announced. Before even asking if I was okay. I spent the entire time stressing about my card. Do you have any idea how humiliating it is to get declined in front of strangers? I held the phone, looked at my daughter, and said nothing, which she took as a green light to should continue. Mom said you had a meltdown and cut off the family money. Which, fine, have your feelings. But I have a product launch, and I literally cannot function without that account. So, can you just fix it before dinner tomorrow? So, we don't have to make this a whole thing. Fix it before dinner. As if my near death and my baby being abandoned were just a clogged drain, ruining her content calendar. I asked her one thing. Megan, where do you think that money actually comes from? There was a pause. The first real silence I had ever heard from her. From Mom and Dad, she said. But her tone had an upward lift. A question disguised as an answer. The first crack of doubt I had ever heard in my sister's voice. It is a family thing. I told her. I would see her tomorrow and let her work it out. Because some bills you have to read yourself before you truly believe them. She did not know it yet. But she was about to find out who had. I've been signing her checks for 9 years in a room full of relatives, with no card to decline and no story left to hide behind. Sunday. We drove to my parents' house, the house with the mortgage I believed I was paying. I sat in the car for a moment, in the driveway, gathering my resolve. I still wore the cast and around my wrist. The hospital ID band was still cinched, 5 days old now. Soft and gray. I kept it on purpose. I finally peeled it off in the car and tucked it into my pocket. Because I wanted that small, hard piece of proof of exactly where I had been the night my mother chose a cat. Daniel carried Nora's car seat in his right hand, and from the curb behind us came the slow, careful tapping of a cane. Then came that Harold in his Sunday flannel, holding that manila folder tucked under his arm with those brittle, snapped rubber bands. He insisted on driving separately so my mother wouldn't see us walk in together, and put her guard up. "You ready?" he asked on the porch. Through the glass, I saw the whole group gathered. Aunt Carol and 2 cousins. My father in his chair. My mother hovering near them, pouring coffee and playing the wounded hostess, queen of a kingdom I had funded, yet never given a seat at the table. Megan lounged on the couch, phone in hand, sunburnt, completely oblivious. "I'm ready," I said. And I meant it with a resolve I never had before. Harold nudged the door open with the tip of his cane, and we stepped in out of the cold. The 3 people my mother least wanted to see, carrying a baby, a cast, an ID band, and a folder. The room went silent. My mother spun around, coffee pot in hand, her fake welcome smile already locked on. The evening began. My mother is, I'll give her this, a natural performer. And she opened strong. She set down the coffee, clutched her chest, and swept across the room toward Nora, her eyes already glistening for the crowd. "Oh, there is my grandbaby," she cooed. Reaching out, Daniel pivoted the car seat away. Gentle but firm. Her reach faltered, then moved to Act 2. She addressed the relatives, ignoring me entirely. "I am just so relieved we are all here. Because this has been the hardest week of my life." Her life. The week I spent in a hospital bed was supposedly the hardest week of her life. She told them, voice shaking on cue, that her daughter had a minor accident. Thank God. And used it as a cruel excuse to cut off her suffering parents, abandoning them in their old age over some imagined grudge. She dabbed her eyes. Aunt Carol nodded, though I noticed Carol would not look at me. I knew my evidence was sitting right there. Caught her eye. My father stared at his hands. Megan looked up from her phone, confused. Sensing the scene had a role for her she hadn't practiced. And then my mother delivered her classic, the line she had used to win every room for 30 years, turning to face me with wet, wounded eyes and a voice pitched perfectly for the cheap seats. "I do not understand where this bitterness comes from. Your sister never has these emergencies." The fourth time, in that warm, crowded house with everyone staring. She dealt me the exact insult. She used to leave my newborn alone, and she had no clue she had just loaded the gun and handed it to me grip first. The room waited for me to break or scream or crumble. I did none of those things. I reached into the diaper bag past the wipes and pulled out one folded sheet of paper. I did not stand up and make a scene. I unfolded the single page, smoothed it flat against my lap with my one good hand, and set it on the dining table in the middle of the room where the light from the lamp fell on it. Then I said in the same steady voice I used to present a quarterly report, "You are right. Mum, Megan never has these emergencies. I would like to show everyone why." I slid the page to the center. "This is every dollar I sent this family for the last 9 years. $486,000. The room went deathly still. Carol leaned in despite herself. The top rows are bank records. $65,000 for the heart surgery. The surgeon. The bills. Prescriptions. $11,000 went toward that. Mortgage. I let that sink in for a beat. The rest is the part Mom claims she handles all on her own. I touched the page lightly. No drama, just drawing their eyes. $290,000 in cash withdrawn over 9 years. Nearly all within 2 miles of the Black Hawk Casino. A ripple went through the room. A collective gasp, the sound of a story finally cracking. $120,000 went to Megan, including $40,000 once labeled as Dad's surgery, so nobody would dare ask questions. My sister slowly lifted her head. That is where your card money comes from. Mug? I said softly. Because none of this was truly her fault. It came from me. It always came from me. My mother's performance had hit a dead end. The tears she summoned for sympathy were just salt water on a face caught in a crowded room. And her hand was shaking, over nothing. I stared at her and did not raise my voice at all. It is handled, I said. 3 days of grief and 9 years of silence had compressed into 2 words. And they landed in that room like a gavel. My mother opened her mouth. And I watched her reach for her only remaining weapon. To call me a liar. A thief. An ungrateful child. To bury the truth under a landslide of manufactured emotion. The way she always had. She got as far as, that is twisted. You have twisted everything. Your father and I never. And that is when my grandfather leaned his cane against the table and set his manila folder down beside my single sheet. The brittle rubber bands had to be pried off. They had been on so long they left permanent grooves. He opened it with the steady hands of a man who had waited a year for this exact moment. And he spoke for the first time since we had command in a dry gravel voice that somehow filled the room more than my mother ever did with her tears. I knew. I always knew. He told the relatives. Not Linda. Ruth knew it too. At the end. She had me track it. He pulled out a thick, official-looking document, a Boulder law firm name on the cover. This is your grandmother's trust. And mine? Last spring? Ruth and I moved almost everything we owned into it. The land. This house sitting on our parcel. And always the accounts. He placed it where everyone could see. It never goes to Linda. Linda does not control a dollar of it. He looked at my mother then. And there was no cruelty. Just a tired, final clarity. We left it to Paige and to the baby. There is a fund for Nora's schooling. The rest is in trust. Just like Ruth wanted. So it cannot be gambled away. He tapped the folder. My attorney says it holds up. We made damn sure it holds up. My mother's face did something I had never seen before. That wounded matriarch, mask just fell off, revealing raw panic, because the house she was standing in the kingdom, she ruled the story she spun for 30 years, had just been handed, in a stapled document with 2 signatures, to the daughter she had abandoned in a hospital bed. The room did not look at me. The room looked at her. What happened next is the part people always hope will be an apology. And it never is. I want you braced for that. The way I wish I had been. My mother did not say she was sorry. She cycled through everything else first. She wept loud and sudden. And when the room stayed cold, she pivoted to my father. Roy, are you going to let them do this to me? This was your mess. 2. The surgery. All of it. My father flinched. For one moment. The same moment I had glimpsed on the phone. He lifted his head and looked at me. His mouth opening. And I thought, this is it. This is where he finally stands up. Paige is right. He said, barely a whisper. Linda. The casino. You know how it has been." And my mother's head snapped toward him. And the look. The letter she gave him was 40 years old. And he stopped. He paused, looking back down at his hands. And that was my father's final word on the matter. And I felt something inside me let him go gently. For good. My mother, stripped even of her usual silence, turned to pure rage. "You will regret this," she hissed at me, her tears already drying because they had never been real. "I will fight that trust. I will get a lawyer. You cannot just steal a person's home." Harold answered before I could. "Mel das Milk. It was never your home. Linda, it was your mother's. And these cases, they almost never go anywhere in court when the legal paperwork is clean. Almost never." He was careful with that word. A truly honest man. Even now. Megan was crying genuine tears in the corner. Not for me, but in the dawning horror of a young woman realizing the well had a Ractor Lastain bottom and she had been standing on the person at the bottom of it. I gathered my papers. I had one thing left to do. And it was the easiest thing of all. I stood slowly, because my broken ribs did not allow for drama. Even when the moment called for it. I took Nora's car seat from Daniel and held it on my lap for a moment. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the soft gray hospital band I had worn for 5 days. And I did not say a word about it. I just looped it once around the handle of my daughter's car seat and let it rest there. A small, ugly piece of proof that I would see every time I carried her. Not the bank app. Not the spreadsheet. Not the folder. That little band was the whole story. The night I nearly died and my family checked a cruise schedule. My mother was still talking. Threats sliding into pleas now. "Paige. Honey. We can fix this. We are family." But her voice had stopped being able to reach me. Me. Just like music fading out the second you step out of the room. I turned to Aunt Carol. She'd gone pale. "Silence." I spoke. Completely calm. "Thanks for reading the numbers. Carol, I trust you to tell them the truth. Not a threat. Just a fact." She knew it. She nodded. Then I looked at my father one last time. "Hemet Megaze." I gave him a small nod. It meant I understood. We were good. And I was still leaving. Daniel grabbed the diaper bag. Harold gathered his folder and his cane. The 3 generations my mother least wanted together walked back out into the cold October air and salve. I pulled the door shut behind us with my good hand. Softly. Because slamming it would show I still wanted something from the people inside. I didn't. The account was closed. Here is how it settled. Since I know you're curious. The trust held. My mother called 2 lawyers. Both told her the same thing. Harold had that clean paperwork. A competent donor is impossible to fight. The threats quietly stopped. She and my father still live there because the trust lets them stay for their lifetimes. I am not in the business of tossing an old man on the street, regardless of what his silence cost me. But Blackhawk no longer runs on my cash. And a casino without fresh money is just a sad room with carpet. Megan got a job. A real one. At a marketing firm that does not care about her follower count. Last I heard. She was learning that a launch you fund yourself feels different than one your sister pays for. She texted me once. Months later. 3 words. Where did it go? And I sent back a single I placed on the table. She never answered. But she never asked me for money again. Aunt Carol finally told the truth. Just as I expected she would. And the family group chat went silent for a long time. My father still calls. But only when he's alone in his car. I always pick up. Eat. Our night nurse. Stayed 2 weeks while my ribs healed. She still sends Nora a birthday card. And Harold sold his place across town and moved into a rental 10 minutes from us. He comes over for Sunday dinner and brings the folder every single time, sets it on my bookshelf, and says, "Just in case anyone forgets, if there is one thing I learned from a hospital bed, a folder, and 4 taps on a banking app, it is this. The people who praise you for being the strong one are usually just identifying the person they have quietly decided they will never have to carry. And the day you stop being their bank is the day you finally get to be something better," which for me meant being a mother to my own daughter, instead of a parent to everyone who refused to grow up. That is my story. 9 years of that folder, and the truth, my family kept buried. If this reminded you to read one statement tonight, or to check who you would call from a hospital bed, take that as your sign and do it today. If you know someone always cast as the strong one, share this. Share this story. Leave a comment. And make sure to subscribe. I will see you in the next video. A faucet does not choose who drinks from it. It only keeps running until someone finally turns the handle. For years, I let my life pour out quietly, one transfer, one excuse, one emergency at a time, believing that if I kept everyone else afloat, I would still have a place in the family. But the night I lay in that hospital bed, with my newborn being cared for by a stranger while my own mother chose convenience, I understood what those payments had really cost me. Not just money, presence, peace, motherhood. Myself. That gray hospital band became the smallest and clearest receipt I ever carried. It reminded me that a crisis reveals the truth faster than any argument. The people who truly love you do not need a perfect moment to show up. They show up when it is difficult, inconvenient, and unrewarded. And the people who only value what you provide will call your boundary cruelty the moment the giving stops. From then on, I stopped being the family's open faucet and became the keeper of my own home, my own child, and my own future. Author Nguyen Van Chien.